みんな、ちょっと手を止めて聞いてくれるかい？紹介する。今日からうちの部署に配属になった東山くんだ。
福岡支店の方からやってきました東山です。よろしくお願いします。
You're stepping into a building you've only ever seen in movies. Its glass walls reflecting ambition, a quiet confidence pervading the space. And suddenly, you realize you don't truly belong here yet. That feeling sits right at the center of Fukuoka's story. Fukuoka came from a modestly well-off family. After years of hard work and studying, he finally achieved his dream when he was hired by a large corporation. This was not only a career advancement, but also a gateway to a whole new world for him. He was assigned to work under Mr. Ozawa and his wife Julia, a couple widely respected within the company. To Fukuoka, they seemed to represent everything he associated with the upper class: calm authority, measured speech, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Watching them interact with others, he couldn't help but compare their lives to the flawless images of success he had absorbed from films and stories over the years. At the same time, uncertainty followed him like a shadow. He questioned his own readiness. His experience felt thin compared to the environment around him. Every task seemed loaded with meaning. Every mistake something he feared would expose how out of place he felt. Yet beneath that anxiety lived a powerful curiosity. He didn't just want to succeed at the job. He wanted to understand the world he had entered. In quiet moments, Fukuoka caught himself wondering what life truly looked like behind the polished surface. Did people like Mr. Osawa and Julia live effortlessly, protected from doubt and pressure? Or was there more beneath the calm expressions and tailored professionalism? These questions stayed with him, unspoken but persistent, shaping the way he observed every interaction. What surprised him most early on was not the workload or the standards, but the atmosphere. Despite the competitive setting, there was a sense of structure and intention. People didn't rush blindly. They moved with purpose. Fukuoka began to notice that success here was not about being loud or dominant, but about consistency, preparation, and respect for process. This realization challenged some of his assumptions, even as his curiosity deepened. Julia, in particular, stood out. Contrary to the distant image he had imagined, she approached conversations with warmth and attentiveness. She asked questions, listened carefully, and offered guidance without judgment. For Fukuoka, this was unexpected. It subtly contradicted the idea that those at the top were disconnected from those still finding their footing. Fukuoka felt himself standing between two versions of reality: the imagined world of the upper class he had carried for years, and the lived experience slowly unfolding in front of him. He hadn't found answers yet, but something had shifted. The distance he once felt between himself and people like Mr. Osawa and Julia no longer seemed as vast as before. For the first time, curiosity began to feel less like longing and more like motivation, quietly pushing him forward as he continued to observe, learn, and grow within this unfamiliar world. As his initial nervousness softened, his senses became sharper. He began noticing patterns, the way senior employees prepared quietly before meetings, how decisions were rarely rushed, and how respect was earned through consistency rather than titles. This world, which once felt intimidating, now felt carefully constructed, almost intentional. Fukuoka's curiosity intensified, but it became more focused. He no longer wondered only about wealth or comfort. He wanted to understand mindset. He observed how Mr. Osawa handled pressure with calm restraint, never raising his voice, never displaying urgency without reason. There was a steadiness to his presence that made others feel grounded. It wasn't something that could be copied overnight, and that realization both fascinated and humbled Fukuoka. At the same time, Julia's influence grew clearer. She had a way of turning everyday conversations into learning moments. During routine tasks, she would ask simple questions that encouraged reflection rather than quick answers. She spoke openly about responsibility, about the importance of aligning personal values with professional decisions, and about how success often demands trade-offs that are rarely shown on the surface. These conversations felt informal, yet they carried weight. Fukuoka began to notice a subtle contrast between his expectations and reality. The upper-class lifestyle he once imagined as flawless now appeared layered and complex. There was comfort, yes, but also responsibility. There was stability, but it was maintained through discipline and long-term thinking. The calm he saw was not the absence of pressure, but the result of learning how to manage it over time. These moments reshaped how Fukuoka viewed growth. He realized that people in this environment did not expect perfection from newcomers. What they valued was effort, awareness, and accountability. This understanding eased his fear and encouraged him to ask thoughtful questions rather than staying silent. Each answer he received added another layer to his understanding of what true professionalism looked like. As Fukuoka absorbed these insights, his curiosity shifted again. It was no longer about comparing himself to others, but about measuring his own progress. He started setting small goals, improving one skill at a time, observing how feedback was applied, and learning how decisions were evaluated. This made his days feel purposeful rather than overwhelming. Importantly, Fukuoka also learned that admiration should not turn into imitation without understanding. Julia once mentioned, in a calm and thoughtful way, that success looks different for everyone, and that copying another person's life without considering your own values can lead to quiet dissatisfaction. That idea resonated deeply with him. It reframed his curiosity, turning it inward. Fukuoka no longer felt like a visitor peeking into an unreachable world. He still had questions, but they no longer carried anxiety. Instead, they carried purpose. The image of the upper class he once idealized was slowly giving way to something more realistic, more human, and far more inspiring than he had expected. The moment that truly tested Fukuoka's understanding did not arrive with noise or confrontation. It came quietly, wrapped in responsibility. He was assigned to assist on a project that required coordination across multiple departments, something he had never handled before. At first glance, it seemed manageable. But as deadlines tightened and expectations became clearer, the weight of the task began to settle in. Fukuoka found himself facing a familiar internal conflict. Part of him wanted to prove that he belonged, that he could keep up with people who appeared so composed and capable. Another part of him feared that any misstep would confirm his old doubts. This tension followed him through long hours of preparation, careful revisions, and moments of hesitation where he questioned whether to ask for guidance or struggle through alone. What surprised him was how the pressure exposed a deeper truth about the environment he worked in. Instead of urgency turning into chaos, it brought focus. Mr. Ozawa reviewed progress with calm precision, not by pointing out what went wrong, but by clarifying what mattered most. He emphasized priorities, reminding everyone that progress came from alignment, not from rushing. Watching this, Fukuoka began to understand that leadership was less about control and more about direction. Julia's role during this period left a lasting impression. She noticed Fukuoka's effort and quiet frustration, and rather than intervening directly, she offered perspective. She spoke about moments earlier in her own career when responsibility felt overwhelming, and how learning to ask for support had been a turning point. Her words carried reassurance without removing accountability. They made space for growth rather than fear. As the project unfolded, Fukuoka made small mistakes. Each time, he expected disappointment. Instead, he received something else: constructive feedback delivered with respect and clarity. He realized that in this world, mistakes were not the end of credibility. Avoiding learning from them was. This experience challenged one of his deepest assumptions about the upper class. He had believed that their composure came from certainty, from always knowing the right answer. Now he saw that it often came from experience with failure, correction, and reflection. Their confidence was built, not inherited. As Fukuoka worked through the final stages of the project, something shifted within him. He stopped viewing the task as a test of worth and started seeing it as an opportunity to learn. This change did not eliminate stress, but it made the stress manageable. He became more open, more communicative, and more attentive to feedback. In doing so, he found a rhythm that felt sustainable. The completion of the project did not come with celebration or dramatic recognition. It ended quietly, like most meaningful work does. But for Fukuoka, the impact was significant. He had confronted his fear, navigated responsibility, and emerged with clarity. The image of the upper class as untouchable perfection had faded even further, replaced by an understanding of effort, structure, and resilience. There is an important lesson to carry forward. True confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to move forward despite it. The environments we admire often demand more from us, but they also offer more in return if we are willing to learn, reflect, and grow. Fukuoka no longer measured success by appearances. He measured it by progress, accountability, and the quiet confidence that comes from facing challenges honestly. The world he once viewed from a distance was no longer mysterious. It was demanding, human, and deeply instructive, exactly what he needed at this stage of his journey. The questions that once filled Fukuoka's mind slowly settled into something calmer and more meaningful. He stopped measuring his life against the image of the upper class he once admired from afar, and began focusing on what truly shaped the people around him each day. What stood out was not comfort or status, but consistency. Their calm was not accidental. It was built through discipline, clear principles, and thoughtful choices. This realization brought relief. Success was no longer something distant or unreachable. It was something shaped gradually through patience and steady effort. Fukuoka also understood that the idea of upper class was misleading. The real difference was not in emotions, but in how people responded to challenges, with reflection instead of impulse, and long-term thinking over short-term comfort. By observing rather than comparing, Fukuoka found clarity. He no longer tried to copy another life. Instead, he began building his own, guided by values, self-awareness, and quiet perseverance. If you found value in this video, consider liking it, sharing it with someone who might need encouragement today, and subscribing for more meaningful stories about growth, work, and life. Thank you for watching, and keep moving forward at your own pace.